definitely. I mean, for me, I got to read this twice. It reminds me of a good movie. You know, you watch it the first time, and you're like, I got to watch it again just so I can take notes. I can really thumb through the things. That's definitely what Whole Again is. And I want to start with the psychology of brokenness. The fact that it can happen at any stage of life, and just to have a somewhat of a transparent moment. Like, I literally just got married 1 year ago, coming up in August. Well, I guess it'll be almost a year.
Wow,
And
congratulations.
thank you.
Newlyweds. Yeah,
And I know, right? Still in our phase. We've always been in that phase. But
that's a blessing.
no, really just going through a lot, over these last 2 years with family things and getting married and the whole 9 yards. And literally, I had a family member who I was taking care of that they were on their deathbed, like just recently, and
Wow.
just having to deal with that. So like you said, can you talk about for people to be prepared that, of course, brokenness can happen literally at any stage of life, and how can people kind of be prepared for that?
Wow, that's an interesting question, how to be prepared for it. And I just want to double click on something you said, then I'm going to come back to that. Just in terms of, you said you're going to have to go back and read it again. And that is always the feedback I have. I was actually speaking with a pastor friend of mine today. She's reviewing the book. She has like a book club kind of a thing, and she's reviewing the book there. But she was even saying to me today, like, I am taking my time reading this book. She said, I don't think it's ever taken me this much time to read a book because it is dense. There's a lot of concepts, there's a lot of frameworks. Excuse me, there's a lot to think about, that you start to process your own life and your own experience. Um, and so I think in terms of being prepared for brokenness, there's a few things that I want to just say about this. Number one, I think, and this is also something she said, which is related to what I want to say about it. She said, I would never have picked up this book because I never thought of myself as broken. And she says, I picked it up to support. But once I started to read the book, I started to understand what brokenness was. And I started to understand how that's a continuum to wholeness. And so she was able to begin to see herself through a new lens. And I always say this, that especially for those that are believers, um, that if you are broken or if you have experienced periods of brokenness, you are in good company, because Jesus was broken. He was broken for us. And if we are really believers and we know that we're going, follow his life and what his real lived experience is our lived experience, it's just to know we're going to have periods of brokenness. And I can remember, even for me, before I wrote this book, like, I never would describe myself as broken until I really entered a period where my life was undone and there were shattered pieces. And then I really began to look back, and I looked at, like, I really had lived a broken life. But I then understood that I lived a broken life so that I can live a broken life before God. So brokenness is not something that we need to be ashamed of, that we need to shy away from. I think it's important for us to look at all of our life and how life has shaped us, and recognize that we have had periods that broke us. And as you talked about, that it can happen at any period of life. I talk a lot in the book about in our early life as children, and different circumstances that break us as children, because we don't have the background, we don't have the experience, we don't have you know um, the mind, the ability to think as an adult. But I think in terms of being prepared, um, I think we understand life happens, and we don't want to get to the moment without any resources. So it's not that we're necessarily preparing to be broken, but we're preparing to live our best life. We're preparing to be able to tap into higher levels of mental well being. And when we're living our life in that way, when brokenness happens, we will be better able to move through that period of life. So I am, a proponent, a big proponent around healing, around staying connected to healing spaces, around being introspective and looking at ourselves, not to be perfect, but to be prepared, to be, to become and to go higher in who we are and be the best version of ourselves at any given time. And if we can do that, we will definitely be much better prepared when brokenness comes into our life.
Wow, I love that. We're getting a lot of hearts